Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
I got a note from Scott Bullock from the Institute for Justice, and it's an email that he sent out to a lot of people. So you may have seen this also. A lot of people did forward this to me. But Steve, today we're celebrating a win for the citizens of Wilmington, Delaware. The city, faced with further litigation by the Institute for Justice, came to an agreement to overhaul its predatory impound racket. Predatory impound racket. Two people and the Institute for Justice sued in 2021 after their vehicles were towed and impounded by private companies working for the city. Wilmington aggressively ticketed cars, including cars that were parked legally, and then empowered the towing companies to keep and scrap the cars they impounded when the owners couldn't pay exorbitant fees, and allowed the companies to pocket the excess value. And that makes no sense. I've mentioned before, I used to drive a tow truck. I drove a tow truck for the city of Birmingham, and I impounded cars. Now, in my cases, we would take the cars and bring them to the city impound lot, and our job was done. But let's go to the hypothetical here. One day, someone abandons a car in the middle of the road. Police come by, there's a car there. No one's with this car. What's it doing? It's blocking traffic. They call a wrecker. Wrecker comes out, takes the car, and takes it to an impound yard. No one comes to claim the car. They send a note to the owner at the address of the registration and say, hey, we got your car. To get it out, you got to pay a towing fee and impound fee. No response. More time goes by. Storage fees are being racked up. No one shows up. They send more notices, certified mail, everything, nothing. No one shows up. Eventually, that car will get sold at auction, and the proceeds will go to pay off that bill. So let's suppose the car is worth $10,000. And let's assume that the towing bill and the impound, all those different fees, double secret probation fees, add up to $1,000. You take the vehicle to auction, it sells for $7,000 because they never sell for what they're worth, and they can pay themselves the $1,000 to cover their costs. The excess the surplus, should go to the owner. Why not? Apparently in Wilmington, it would go to the towing company? What? And it reminds us of the states that allowed the local authorities to retain the surplus if a home was foreclosed upon at a tax auction and say, well, the unpaid taxes were this, but all this leftover money, we have to keep that too. Why would that make any sense? So it makes no sense to let the surplus stay with the towing company here. So that's strange. And by the way, one of the problems is when you let that happen, it incentivizes the towing company to tow more vehicles. So rather than use the proceeds from the vehicle to pay off the owner's ticket debt, the city instead demanded the car owner pay up, even after the car had been scrapped. And so it looks like they weren't even applying the money from the sale to pay off these tickets. It's crazy. But Scott wrote the next sentence, but not anymore. Not anymore. Under the terms of the court-sanctioned agreement, and in this case, court-sanctioned means the court agrees with this, Wilmington's improved system will focus on three things: repeated notice, easy payment plans for parking tickets, and convenient hearings. Oh, that'll help. Old regulations required vehicle owners to pay hundreds of dollars up front to get their cars back. Under the new regulations, people will be able to get their cars back so long as they either attend their hearing or enter into a payment plan. Okay? So one of the plaintiffs here said, it was hard when Wilmington took my vehicle, even though I was parked legally. I wasn't the only one mistreated, but hopefully this will never happen again in our city. So the lawsuit was headed to trial. But under pressure from the suit, the city worked with the Institute and local council to create this new system that will prevent these injustices from happening to anybody else. The city additionally agreed to compensate these two plaintiffs for the cars the towing company destroyed. And the destruction of the cars, again, makes no sense. Why not just auction them off and use that money? But these sweeping changes will better protect vehicle owners in Wilmington and beyond. Now we can use this as a model to challenge other cities that operate similar predatory schemes. If those cities want to avoid an IJ lawsuit, we will have a blueprint ready for the changes they need to implement. Thank you for standing with us as we fight to secure freedom and justice for all Americans. Scott Bullock, President and Chief Counsel, the Institute for Justice. And I've mentioned before, I love the Institute and the work they do. And of course, they are a nonprofit, and they survive and operate entirely based on the generosity of supporters. So please, if you can, support them. I'll put the link to them in the description below the video. And if nothing else, bookmark their page and sign up for the newsletter. And you'll read about these kinds of stories, and they're doing this kind of work all the time. But, I was thinking about this, and I mentioned before I drove a tow truck. I also have helped somebody do an auction on a car that they were owed money on. And a long, long time ago, a friend of mine who owned a gas station that had mechanics working at it, someone came in with a car, and they wanted work done on it. And he called them and said, hey, look, I've discovered what's wrong with your car, and it's going to be an expensive fix. And I forgot what was wrong with the car, but I do remember what kind of car it was, but that's irrelevant to the story. And they said, yeah, go ahead and fix it. And so he gave them a written estimate in advance and said, here's what the cost of the repair is going to be, blah, 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 blah. They signed it. And he did the repairs. And he called them to say that the car was ready, and they didn't come pick up the car. He just left messages for them. He'd leave more messages. They didn't come. So then he sent them some letters and said, I've got your car. It's repaired. I need you to come pay for it. They never did. So he's got the keys to the car. He's got the car. And under Michigan law and in many states, he has a mechanic's lien on that car. And the mechanic's lien means that he has the right to take that car and auction it off in a publicly attended auction and all that, and auction it off and take the proceeds of that auction to pay himself for the work he did. And then if there's any surplus, it goes back to the car owner, like it's supposed to be. And so I remember talking to him about all different processes he had to do and post notices and send notices and all this stuff. And at the end, when the dust settled, he sold it at an auction. It didn't raise the money necessary. But like I said, it was an old car, not so old that it was valuable, but it was old enough to where it wasn't worth much more than the work he put into it. But the problem, of course, is that he couldn't get these people to call him back or even respond to any of his notifications. And I think what happened was the person who asked him to do the work was hoping they could scrape up the money, but they couldn't. And instead of calling him back, going, look, I got a problem, how can we work this out? They just ignored all the notices. And so these kinds of situations can make sense. So can Wilmington tow cars that are illegally parked? Yes, of course they can. Can they charge people for that? Yes. Could they take a vehicle to auction and sell it if the owner doesn't take care of this? Presumably. Can they then take the surplus from that sale and pocket it or give it to the towing company? No, that's where it falls apart. Likewise, can they ticket legally parked cars? No, that makes no sense either. And so, again, I'm reading between the lines here. But the fact that they're towing legally parked cars in a situation where hearings are hard to come by, and the towing company gets a surplus when it happens, and the city somehow still gets paid, of course bad things are going to happen. And this is a great example of bad laws enforced weirdly, resulting in a situation that is horribly unjust. And the good news is the Institute for Justice came in, got involved, and straightened it out. So now, Wilmington, Delaware, they got their act together. And if other cities are doing this, please let the Institute for Justice know, because they'd like to come in and do something about it. So again, I got this directly from Scott Bullock, President and Chief Counsel of the Institute for Justice, and they are celebrating the win for the citizens of Wilmington, Delaware, and they've gotten rid of what they called the Predatory Impound Racket. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. When walking, always look behind you, unless you're in a construction zone or on a deck or a dock.